There's one particular thing that I want to spend some time talking with you about, and that's the security versus privacy factor. This is probably the biggest tension that employers have to confront when they're considering or adopting a BYOD environment. On one hand, you have your trade secrets as an employer. You have your confidential information. Maybe it's profit loss margins. Maybe it's customer lists. It could be anything. You have all that. Okay, you have to worry about getting out if you adopt a BYOD environment or have a BYOD environment. You have risks of viruses, malware, infections, people who are using their own devices without the proper controls, okay, may stand to intentionally or unintentionally bring that into your workplace and compromise the security of your information. You have that to deal with. You have the concern about data migration, taking data out. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Taking data outside the workplace that employees can now do. They can still have done it before, even without having their own devices and using their own phones. They could do it using your technology. That's not necessarily new, but it's a more acute risk now just because it's easier to make that happen. You have all those concerns about privacy, about security as an employer that you need to balance against all of these sources of personal information to employees. Okay? Facebook. Employees have all of their personal information anymore on Facebook. Okay? They take pictures on their phones. We don't need digital cameras anymore like we used to. We just take our pictures with our phone. Our employees do that. They're going to use their smartphones to take photos and have those personal memories on their phone. They're going to store their own account information on them. That's why I have e-wallet up there as a sign of it. They're going to store their passwords. They're going to store their bank routing information. They're going to store all kind of things on there. As an employer, what are you going to do when it comes to facing the possibility of having access to that information, and more specifically, your employees wanting to be sure that you don't access it? Okay? That's the tension that we have here in balancing the security versus privacy. Okay? And the proliferation of this technology, 24/7, okay, it makes it easy to just capture and image these conditions in a moment's notice. And not just share it with the world in a few taps on Twitter or Facebook, okay, which is all it takes, but also to store it in the cloud. Okay, we take it out of there, put it in the cloud, and once an employee does that, the control's lost. And it's not subject to your security anymore. It's floating around out there in proverbial cyberspace, if you will, okay? And no one's going to be able to keep tabs on it at that point. That's what employees can do if they bring their smartphones into the workplace, okay? One of the other huge concerns that we're dealing with here, particular issues in the security privacy area that employers need to be concerned about, is what they can do quickly, what your employees can do quickly on Vine and Instagram, which are, again, video taking services. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Vine is basically Twitter's video sharing application. Instagram is lined up more with Facebook. They allow you to capture videos, create videos even yourself. It's not just using your phone, using your smartphone, using your own device as a camera where you just are taking everything else. You can create your own things. Vine creates 6-second videos. Instagram creates 15-second videos. And the dangers here are great. What can your employees put out there to everybody to see? Confidential information? You bet it can be done in 6 seconds. Don't kid yourself if you think it can't. Having the technology in the workplace like this, especially their own, tends to lower people's thresholds for comfort. That's what social media does. It makes us way more comfortable than we should be releasing and sharing information with everyone. And it can be extremely damaging to you as an employer if you don't properly manage it. So something about an ounce of prevention equals a pound of cure, right? Everybody's heard of that phrase. I mean, that's applicable here. To manage this issue, you need to get out in front of it. And you need to spend time on it. You have to do it at the front end. You have to examine things like protocols on security of your devices. You have to maintain control as an employer. That includes locking the devices if you have one of these environments. It includes having passwords, antivirus software, restrictions even on apps that your employees are permitted to have on their device. And again, there's tension there, right? I mean, these are their own phones. Are they going to be happy with an employer telling them, well, yeah, we have a BYOD environment now, but you can't have this app on your phone that you really like and you use every other day or every week? But that's a consideration for employers. You need to consider how well you control this environment if you are going to adopt it. And you have to have data management controls internally too. So it's not just what your employees are doing, it's what you're doing. Are you able to track what your employees are doing? Can you see it all? Can you see all the connections on your network? How's everything configured? Who's accessing your data and when? How can you respond to that if something goes wrong? Okay? Those are all considerations when you try to struggle through this security versus privacy tension we've been talking about. And I have a note on there on the slide that says, be careful about going too far. Privacy is sensitive, as many of you probably know. It's particularly sensitive at the state level. Okay, there are many state laws that govern privacy. It doesn't just have to relate to technology, it can relate to a lot of things. But states at the common law level, with all the court decisions in the various states, tend to take that very seriously. Okay? So you need to be careful when you develop these policies about not going too far, striking the balance of appropriate security for you, but not going too far to infringe on privacy. And that gets back to what we talked about earlier, is having the right people involved as you consider whether or not to have this environment.